This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
we can disagree on policy. At the end of the day, what I'm wanting to do is lead this country to a better place and fix this economy.
he calls himself Tennessee's most conservative mayor. Republican Andy Ogles wants to be the next 5th District Congressman.
Most focused on being the governor right now.
Governor Bill Lee is up for re-election this year, but says he's too busy being governor to debate his Democratic opponent. First Lady Jill Biden visits Nashville, encouraging citizens in one of the least COVID-vaccinated states in the nation to get the new booster. More in our This Week cover story.
We really want there to be removal of the criminalization of physicians.
A group of Tennessee doctors call it dangerous. They have signed a full-page ad asking state lawmakers to repeal Tennessee's abortion ban. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. First Lady Jill Biden was in town promoting the new COVID booster shot. More in our This Week cover story. Later, a conversation with 5th District Congressional Republican nominee Andy Ogles. But first, state Republicans respond to an open letter signed by doctors urging lawmakers to repeal the state's abortion ban.
Tonight, abortion and the state's trigger law making its way back into the legislative session.
It's just very hard to do my job when I know I'm not able to provide the service that I once was able to.
Dr. Heather Mowney is a physician in Nashville and says she sees the fear in the eyes of her patients since the trigger law went into effect.
We've had patients say they're moving out of state or that they're holding off on pregnancies because of it. And I'm hoping that this letter might help reconcile some of those things.
Which is why she helped write an open letter to Tennessee lawmakers. In it, more than 700 doctors urge lawmakers to reconsider the trigger law, stating it forces healthcare providers to balance appropriate medical care with the risk of criminal prosecution.
We really want there to be removal of the criminalization of physicians.
Under the current law, there are no exceptions, including rape or incest. Instead, the law gives doctors a defense to use at trial if a mother's life was in danger. Tonight, in a statement from Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, stating purely elective abortions remain the target of this law, going on to say if these imagined flaws in our law were fixed, they would continue to pick apart the law until there was nothing left, while Democrats say change will be an uphill battle.
I think it's unlikely, but they're doing it because they're very concerned about health outcomes, so they're doing their job.
Now, many doctors say they're worried if something does not change within the next session, physicians could be pushed to their brink, some even leaving the profession altogether. Reporting in Nashville, Maya Owens, News 2.
Now to our This Week cover story. Tennessee ranks as the 3rd least COVID-vaccinated state in the nation. This week, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden visited a pop-up vaccination clinic in Nashville, urging people to get the new booster shot. News 2's Kendall Ashman was with the First Lady.
The First Lady was encouraging Tennesseans to get the new COVID booster shot. She was also stressing the new FDA announcement. Anyone 5 years and older is eligible for the COVID-19 booster shot.
First Lady Jill Biden on the campaign trail, making a pit stop right here in the Music City.
Actually, last time I was back here, it was for another COVID event, to get shots in arms. And I was with Brad Paisley, not too bad, right?
But this time solo, emphasizing booster shots.
It is over with. This booster was introduced September 13th, so we're just about a month out. We've already given 35,000 doses here in Nashville.
Gil Wright with Metro Nashville Health Department says St. James Missionary Baptist Church has been instrumental in the fight against COVID.
We know that the black community has an increased risk, as does Hispanic and some of the other minority communities. So partnering like this has been great.
50% of the pre-pandemic attendance, that may be where I am, around 50%.
But today, Pastor Brooks' congregation and Nashvillians were rolling up their sleeves and meeting with the First Lady. In addition to a push for healthy decisions, the pastor believes Jill Biden also left quite an impression on his great-granddaughter.
I hope it will inspire her to do more in life and know that she can become the First Lady of the United States or even President.
And the First Lady also attended a Democratic National Committee event here in Nashville before heading off to Milwaukee. Now, meanwhile, President Biden, he's also on the campaign trail. He was in California today. Bob.
Thank you, Kendall. Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. I'm pleased to be joined by the former mayor of Maury County, the current Republican nominee for the 5th District Congressional seat, Andy Ogles. Welcome to see you, Andy.
Well, good to see you, and thank you for having me.
Congratulations on your primary victory. 11-point win in a crowded race and some drama in the primary as well.
Yeah, you know, it was a bit of a circus at first, and then as we got down into the last 90 days, it became brutal on all sides. I mean, it was a tough primary.
You kind of set the tone for the general election, a victory night speech for after your win that night. You said in your victory speech, we're at war. This is a political war, a cultural war, and it's a spiritual war. And as we go forward, we've got to get back to honoring God and country. My question is, who you at war with and who's God? Because there are constituents who pray to different gods.
Well, you know, I'm a Christian, and end of story. And when you have a culture that is suddenly accepting that transgender issues should be forced on children, when you have hospitals, even in our own community, that are, buying into this fantasy of 12 and 10-year-old kids transitioning, look, they're children, leave them alone. And so let's get back to the fundamentals of governing, which is economics, security, those types of national policy issues.
You also said election night after winning that the liberals were coming for you. That can be interpreted many ways. What do you mean that is?
Well, it is what it is. I mean, when I stand here or sit here and I talk about I'm a man of faith, suddenly I'm under attack for that. If I say that a child should be a child, that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, I'm under attack for that. And there was a time in this country when children, the innocence of children was sacrosanct. It's not anymore.
You call yourself Tennessee's most conservative mayor. You've had that label for a while. And you say this race is really about the establishment versus the conservative wing of the party. Your Democratic opponent said she agrees with you, and she says you're too far right.
Well, I think the district spoke, and it spoke handily, that they wanted someone who is willing to speak their mind. I'm not going to tap dance on the issues. What you see is what you get. And at the end of the day, we can disagree. We talked off air. We can disagree on policy, but at the end of the day, what I'm wanting to do is lead this country to a better place and fix this economy.
Will you debate Heidi before the general election?
You know, I've actually reached out to the Epic Times. I don't know if you recall during the primary, they did a fantastic job on a debate to see if they could pull together something in time. I don't know that there is time to put it together, but we'll see.
If I put together something, would you guys come and do something
We'll
here?
see. Depends on the scheduling.
We'll try to do that. You support former President Trump. You called yourself the MAGA candidate. He did not support you or did not endorse you. Were you surprised at that in your primary run?
No, not at all. In fact, because the primary itself was so chaotic, it made absolute sense for him to stay neutral in the primary.
Where do you stand on the 2020 election? What do you believe happened? What are the conspiracy theories, the election fraud? Do you believe Joe Biden was the duly elected president?
Well, I think what we've seen across the country kind of post-election is that there was fraud in a lot of places. And what concerns me is when you have, let's say, 1 million voters and you're producing 1.2 million ballots, that is inviting fraud. And so we've got to get back to this. First of all, the elections are the responsibility of the states, not Congress. And anyone who says otherwise, you need to run the other direction. We want that to be a states' rights issue. But that being said, there was fraud. We know there was fraud. The question is how much?
That's my next question. Do you think there was enough fraud that this election was tainted, that it was indeed stolen?
Well, that's troubling, right? Like if you have a store and you have 1,000 widgets and you sell 100 of them, you know what your inventory is. And what they can't tell us in a lot of these states is how much fraud was there. And that's a problem. I mean, one of the things that makes us a country is secure borders, right? A good national defense and fair, open, transparent elections. And right now, all three are under attack.
You have called for the impeachment of President Biden and Vice President Harris for deliberately and intentionally attacking Americans by weaponizing COVID and destroying our energy policy, and for Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas to be tried for treason for his handling of immigration issues. Maybe he did a bad job, but treason?
Well, 2 million people coming across the border in the last 12 months. I consider that an invasion. And over the course of this presidency, the Biden administration, you'll have somewhere close to 5 million people come into this country illegally. But now let's go back to that 2 million figure, right? That's twice the population of Delaware. You have roughly 16 states that don't have 2 million people in them. That is a problem, and this individual, this man, is derelict in his duty to defend that southern border. That has to stop. We have to build a wall, secure the border, and quite frankly, no amnesty, period.
Let's talk a little bit more about the border. You've talked about this before. 2005, President Bush had an opportunity, had a plan that there was going to be something done on immigration. The Republicans decided not to do that. President Biden has got total responsibility for the border now, no question about that. But this has been an ongoing issue. It's been a problem for years under both Democratic and Republican presidencies and administrations. So how do you solve the issue? How do you open America up for the country that we want it to be with open arms and yet secure the border so that drugs and drug traffickers don't get through?
Yeah, so that's your point right there. And so fentanyl has made the immigration crisis a problem in every small town in America. I think historically, going back to Reagan, when we first started talking about immigration and he issued amnesty, et cetera, is that, oh, that's a problem for Texas or New Mexico or Arizona or Southern California, right? It was their problem. It was their issue. But now when you have 4 college students overdosing in North Dakota, fentanyl, and the border crisis is everywhere in America. And so I think America is opening up to the idea of we've got to do something, and it's a national security crisis, it's an economic crisis, and when you consider 60% of the women and children that come across that border are sexually assaulted, it's a humanitarian crisis. On that reason alone, we should shut that border down.
On the issue of amnesty, you say you want no amnesty.
None.
For anyone here. There's roughly 13 million illegal immigrants in this country. What about the Dreamers? They were promised a work way forward, that they were brought here as children and promised that eventually they would become citizens.
Well, when it comes to keeping promises, let's talk about our veterans and keeping the promises to our veterans instead of people who came into this country illegally with their parents. And so let's focus on the things that we need to focus on. America first, our veterans, our economy. And look, you know, it's one of those, if you and I want to go work overseas in most country, we never get to become a citizen. We have to get a 1-year work visa. We have to pay their taxes, and we never get to vote. That's the way most of the rest of the world does it. We can do that here too.
If it comes to a vote, I agree with you on veterans. If it comes to a vote, would you vote against citizenship for Dreamers?
Yes.
Let's talk about the economy. Inflation is the biggest issue we're facing right now. Jobs are being created. Unemployment is at a historic low. What do you do in Congress that so far the Biden administration has been unable to do to tame inflation?
Yeah, so what you got to go back to is the root cause of the inflation, right? And 2 simple things. The government put too much money in the economy. Econ 101. The government puts money into the economy, greater than the economy can produce. The backside of that is inflation. And there's a direct correlation between the two. Again, that's Econ 101. And so again, when you look at the trillions of dollars that have been put into the economy, the fact that we have inflation is no surprise. That being said, at the same time, we've had supply chain issues, but more importantly, we've lost our energy independence. And so that is one of the driving forces, is we've got to stop pumping money into the economy, and 2, we have to go back to being energy independent. And that's true for the United States, and then Europe needs to be producing more energy as well.
The COVID relief money was a lot of that money, but if it had not come into the country, a lot of businesses would not have survived.
Well, the question is after that first round, was the second round needed? And how much was needed, right?
Let's talk about a little bit about abortion. Your opponent says you're for a national abortion ban. Are you?
Well, the Supreme Court has spoken. They've put that issue down to the states. It's a states' rights issue, and it's up to the Tennessee General Assembly to decide what reasonable exceptions may be made.
Personally, where do you stand on abortion in regards to should there be any exceptions for life of the mother, for rape, incest, anything?
Well, I'm pro-life, and as someone who has buried one of their children, I can tell you that I'm very much for the life of the child, right? But that being said, it's up to the General Assembly to decide what exceptions are allowed.
Do you agree with Tennessee's law? There are no exceptions in Tennessee's law.
Well, we'll see what the General Assembly does going forward.
Let's talk a little bit about COVID. You talked about that. You disagreed with Governor Lee and how he handled COVID. You were critical of Governor Lee. Are you back on the same page? Do you still think he handled it wrongly?
Well, you know, what's past is past. I kept Maury County open. I believe it was not the role of the government to reach into my life and tell me that I was non-essential. This is America. And look, I had a good friend that died from COVID. I'm not saying that COVID wasn't real, but what I'm saying is that this is America. The virus has a 99% survival rate. And to give a mayor or a governor the right to mandate a medical device, to mandate a vaccine is wrong in this country. And we've got to get back to the fact that this is a free nation and that laws are there for a reason to protect us. And our founding fathers warned us. It was in times of peril and times of crisis that the Constitution and your laws were most at risk. And we saw that, and it blossomed during COVID.
Education, you want to ban critical race theory. It is not taught in Tennessee currently. You know that. You also do not want the Department of Education involved. You believe teachers or parents and school administrators, those are the folks who should have the biggest say-so, that parents should have a bigger role in the voice in education in setting curriculum.
That's right. Now, I will say, when you look at the 5 primary curriculums here in the state of Tennessee, they actually all have social and emotional justice in them. And so to say that it's fully gone out of Tennessee's curriculum is not actually entirely correct. So we've got to get into the woods.
There is nothing known as critical race theory that is taught.
That's right. But when you, again, social and emotional learning, we've got to get back to fixing the curriculum. That's for the Tennessee General Assembly to decide. They have a process that's in place to review those curriculums and improve them. But again, that's for the Tennessee General Assembly. That being said, the U.S. Department of Education, their mandate is to teach children, and they have failed in that mandate. They need to be defunded in a large way, and so that the states can run education, not the federal government. Look, I'm a conservative, right? But if you're in Oregon or you're in Iowa, you don't want some congressman from Tennessee telling you how to run your schools. Just like I don't want some congressman from California or Iowa telling me how to run our schools, right? And so it's got to be, again, a state-driven institution, not driven by the federal government.
As we head towards Election Day, it's not that far away. What are your priorities for this 5th Congressional District? As you said, it is a Republican-leaning district, but you're going to be representing people who voted for Joe Biden and Jim Cooper. How do you represent them as well?
Well, across the country, and this is in Republican districts, independent districts, and even Democrat-leaning districts, the issues are the economy, inflation, crime, immigration, and fentanyl. The only question is in which district is which order are those in. And so whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, everybody's worried about this economy. Everybody's worried about crime. And this fentanyl crisis is touching homes all across America, whether it's downtown Nashville or rural Hohenwald or back down in Murray County. And so those are the issues that I am focused on, and that resonates across the board. And the polling holds that out.
Andy Ogles, Republican nominee for the 5th District Congressional seat. Thank you for your time and your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. We caught up with Governor Bill Lee this week as he outlined a $100 million crime prevention program in response to a growing crime issue across the state of Tennessee. The governor also addressed his re-election campaign and why he is choosing not to debate his Democratic opponent. Governor Lee's Democratic opponent, Dr. Jason Martin, says the governor's voucher program, an invitation to faith-based Hillsdale College to establish charter schools, undermines public education.
I think educating the next generation of Tennesseans is the most important step we can take with regard to the future of our state. That's why we've invested $1 billion in our public school system. It's why we have advanced our vocational and technical education in our state. It's also why we have advocated for parents to have options and choices for their children's education. I think whenever a parent or family has an option, then they can choose what is best for their child, and we'll continue to advocate for that. I'm very excited about what the future holds for our public schools, for our public charter schools, and for school choice across Tennessee. The governor was asked how seriously he is taking his Democratic opponent and the race. I am very happy and very pleased with the work that we've done in this state. I've said it's the highest honor I have to serve as governor, and I'm asking the people of Tennessee to give me an opportunity to do it for 4 more years. It's an incredibly important thing. It matters who governs, and so it's an incredibly important opportunity I have, and I'll continue to pursue it.
Why, as you pursue another 4-year term, why won't you debate Martin? Would like to debate you, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm focused.
Would like to
most focused
debate and sort of see what the choice is.
Most focused on being the governor right now.
The governor outlined new public safety funding.
On the issue of public safety, we just rolled out today our $100 million Violent Crime Intervention Grant Fund. We have a significant crime problem in this country. Tennessee has not escaped it, but unprecedented times really call for unprecedented measures, and that's what this $100 million grant fund will be.
And the governor blamed the crisis and crossings at the border for the increase in crime.
We, like every state in the country, are facing violent crime. Much of the violence in our country and much of the violence in Tennessee is related to and connected to drug crime, drug trafficking. And so long as we have the situation that we have going on in the border, we are going to have drug traffic related crime going on all across this country. It is a connected, those are connected events. And that's why not only are we investing in proven crime strategies, but we are advocating strongly for a resolution to what's happening at our southern border.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us. That will do it for another edition of This Week. I do want to thank my guest, Republican 5th District Congressional candidate Andy Ogles. I hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week, and you have a great